Now, Rabbi, some people are getting very, very upset by this clip. Well, let me just show the clip and then let people have a think.
If the husband comes home and says, "We just hired a new secretary and she is gorgeous," the wife shouldn't be threatened at all. Well, that's good for the business. Why is she threatened? So if he married her for her looks, she's 50 now, can't compete with the secretary. If he married her for her youthfulness, for her whatever, yeah, she's competing with 20-year-olds all her life. And that is cruel, and no woman should get married under those conditions. She'll die before her time. What is it about marriage that makes the wife completely secure, unfazed by who he's going to meet and who he's going to talk to every time he walks out of the house? That's the sanctity of marriage. Everyone can be gorgeous and everyone can be cute and everyone can be lovable, but I'm the wife. Nothing threatens that. We are one.
You sort of just defined a great marriage where a wife in her 50s could be okay if her husband hires a gorgeous secretary and she has no qualms with it, no issue whatsoever.
Because she knows they're one. She's always had that security.
And that is possible.
Intimacy.
Right.
Now, Rabbi, some people are getting very, very upset by this clip. And the argument goes, in reaction to this, some people are saying, is the whole point of so many Torah laws, saying don't commit adultery and, prohibiting touching of the opposite gender and prohibiting, yichud, a man and a woman being alone in a room if they're unmarried, is because it's acknowledging that there is human nature that is fallible, that can get tempted. And so I saw one person saying that I think the rabbi is describing an ideal world, but we don't live in an ideal world. And so they kind of felt that it would just, given the fact that we do live in a world of temptation, and that seems to be the world that the Torah acknowledges is the world we're living in, they say, therefore, it still wouldn't be a good idea to say to one's wife and shove in her face that he's just hired a young, gorgeous new secretary, because human nature still remains. And so I wondered what, your reaction would be to that.
I think the only people who are upset are those who didn't hire the gorgeous secretary and now discover that they could have.
Well, I think in those cases, probably best that they didn't.
I think most married women, correctly or incorrectly, do assume that they're going to be safe. No woman gets married thinking, I'm going to have to keep a leash on my husband because human nature, Well, then what are you doing? What are you putting yourself in a position like that?
Mm.
So maybe it's naive. I could hear that argument. We're all so naive thinking that no, when we get married, our husbands are going to be loyal, never look at another woman, because now that they have everything they need, why should they go shopping? And then when the husband does misbehave, it's like shock. I can't believe you did that. Can't believe? It can't be that the Torah tells us to get married and puts a woman in a position where she will never be able to breathe again from anxiety.
Of course, but it has measures in place to prevent, that acknowledges that there is a danger that, as I think the Gemara puts it, that sin only occurs with a moment of madness, and that human beings are susceptible to that. And the fact is that even I completely agree with you. People should feel utterly safe, and ideally it shouldn't be a threat. But I think some people would feel like, in today's world where there's been so many shocking instances where you thought something about someone and didn't, and it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't be trustworthy. But I think given that people know that life can be unpredictable, to do things that could even slightly just so plant a seed in someone's mind. Um, they just say it's not worth it. What's the point of doing that?
If you really think about it, all the measures that are supposed to prevent adultery can't. Nothing can prevent adultery. So, what's the point of saying that a man and a woman are not allowed to be in a room alone?
Yeah,
If they're willing to commit adultery, they're certainly willing to be in a room alone.
right.
How do
Maybe
you
it's trying to
know that?
prevent it might be trying to prevent circumstances that would lead to that. You hear of cases where adultery occurred because there were two people in a therapy session, and after a few months, so it's trying to stop the circumstances in which these things may happen.
Right, right. It's not trying to prevent adultery. It's trying to prevent the possibility of adultery.
Mm, yeah,
Well, if you can prevent the possibility, your wife would be quite secure that you won't even allow a possibility.
yeah,
But now you're saying, no, but that doesn't help either. Because, human nature. The point is, the Torah helps us transcend human nature if we do it right. And certainly, if there's going to be any degree of security, where will it come from? Well, you promised me, but you said you wouldn't. Come on, that's not secure. The sanctity of marriage has the power to make everyone else irrelevant. Guaranteed? No guarantee. But we're not paranoid about being mugged every time we step out on the street. We're not paranoid of a nuclear. Well, maybe we are. No, we're not. We're not afraid to go to sleep because we'll never wake up. Guaranteed you're going to wake up? No, there's no guarantee. But it doesn't keep us awake. So, to some degree, to a significant degree, a married woman should be free of anxiety, not because it's impossible, but because it is so unlikely. Now, what would create that? The sanctity of the marriage. Now, if you think marriage is just an arrangement between a man and a woman who happen to like each other that week, of course, it doesn't give you any security at all. A man says to a woman, I love you. It is so scary. And, okay, now you love me. And now I got to pay for that. I have to suffer because you love me. It's a strange. I love you is a nasty statement. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it has become. I love you means, okay, now we're in trouble. Remember this show on television where this guy, a movie, this guy is having an affair. His wife is out of town. No, the woman is having the affair on a long weekend or whatever. Right? Obviously, they were friends before, and now they're having an affair. Anyway, at the end of this long weekend, she says, I can't do this. I can't do this. I got to go home. I got to go home. I have a family. And it's very intense and it's very. And he says, according to the script, also intense and meaningful and profound. He says, what about us? That is so evil. What about us with the same dramatic music, with the same, what about us? There's nothing about us. Oh, but I love you. It's vile.
Mm. But wouldn't you accept that? Go
Women
on.
should be more afraid. Women should be more afraid of "I love you" than "Please marry me." Marriage is not as scary as love. Marriage has some stability. Love, you're just in trouble. That's all it is.
But wouldn't you accept that, given that marriage is has lost so much of its sanctity today, in that context, saying going home to your wife, even in a secure marriage, we've just signed a new secretary and she's absolutely gorgeous, that might not be the best idea.
Yeah. So you should. So you shouldn't hire the secretary, or you shouldn't call her gorgeous, or you should hide her from your wife. What should you do here? No one
Interesting
should ever
question. What's
hire.
the issue? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it seems to be in the saying of it, because it's like, we spoke, the last conversation we had actually on JTV was about the issue of, do you distort the truth or avoid saying certain things because it could be provocative? And we said yes, you do avoid saying certain things. So I'm saying, of course, in an ideal world, no one should ever have to question their marriage. In a world in which so many people do, and marriage has lost its sanctity, um, would it be sensible, sensitive, in order not to shove in one's spouse's face the fact that they are working daily with someone that they consider to be very pretty?
I think you're right. You shouldn't say gorgeous. Just say pretty. Yeah.
I mean, what would you say also to the fact that there's also laws around, there's Torah laws around, you're not meant to gaze at I don't know, people of the opposite sex in a that kind of desiring way, when they're not your spouse, right? uh I don't know, does that therefore mean you can't acknowledge whether someone's gorgeous or not? Probably that's just impossible.
Right. Yeah, you can get very excited about the beauty of the carpet or the beauty of the furniture or a beautiful deal that you just made. You can't recognize the beauty of a person. Come on.
Hmm.
The motorcycle is gorgeous, but not a woman.
Hmm.
It just shows how insecure we are about our own loyalties or disloyalties. Or,
But I'm saying, could you accept that if you're advising someone that's in a marriage, if you're advising someone, and it could be such super secure marriage, but given the society we're living in, where it's so common, not just in celebrity culture, but among friends and family, so much infidelity, that maybe this time right now it's an unnecessary thing to state.
that may be so. But if you could say it without your wife getting upset, would that not be the best? Why should you have to be, you know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah.
you should be cautious, but why do we need to be cautious? This is terrible,
Right.
stressful,
Right.
uncomfortable life.
Right. And that sort of gets to the crux of what you're saying.
There's another issue which I think is legitimate. If you say the secretary is gorgeous, You make your wife jealous. That's legitimate. Hey, you're pushing 60. You're a very handsome woman, but you're not gorgeous. So yeah, she'll be jealous. She won't be threatened.
Mm,
No, she wishes she could look like 20. So you may make a little bit envious, but it's not like, oh my God, the marriage is over. Where were you? You're an hour late. Oh, ha, ha. You must have been. No, come on, that
yeah.
that's and that's even if the husband doesn't say anything about the secretary, which makes the wife even more nervous.
So then, okay, so explain, just so we're clear, what is the reason the Torah puts in place Shoma Negia, not touching the opposite sex, avoiding yichud? What's it trying to do? Given that it's saying ideally we should all feel totally secure in our marriages.
Okay, I think that the finer side of that, the more noble side of that, is that, let's say, being alone in a room together when you're not married to each other, that is an intimacy.
Mm,
That degree of intimacy is already inappropriate,
mm,
even though you know for sure it will not lead to anything more than that. So if Avraham and Sarah were in a room with another man or another woman, would you be suspicious? No. And yet they're not allowed. Moshe Rabbeinu and Sarah are not allowed to be in the same room. Who are you suspicious about?
right, right. Well, this happens in modern day context as well. I'll have people say to me, Ollie, you can't hug an old woman, you know, like what you're really telling me that's going to be an issue? And this is clearly your answer, that it's not just about temptation; it's about preserving one's intimacy.
Right. Yeah, it's respect for intimacy, not the suspicion of sin.
Mm, that's beautiful. Wow. Rabbi, do you have time for one final question before we finish?
Yeah. Let me just add this one little
Sure.
point. There are times when intimacy is inappropriate between husband and wife.
Right.
And what is that? Suspicion that you're going to sin?
Obviously not.
Well, it might be if you're weak-willed and so on, or if you're not really committed. But the finer, more noble side of that is don't don't toy with intimacy. Intimacy is holy. Either you're being intimate or don't touch. Don't play with it. So a slight intimacy when husband and wife are not allowed to be intimate, what are you doing to the intimacy? So even if you're absolutely guaranteed you're not going to go any further, remember back in the olden days, don't go all the way. You can be in a car in the back seat with a boy, with a girl, but just don't go all the way. That's crazy. That's so disrespectful of intimacy. Have a little intimacy, a little piece of intimacy, a partial intimacy, a virtual intimacy. Don't do that. You don't do that with things that are holy.
That's so interesting because you've actually answered a question that I was kind of wondering and discussing recently, which is a lot of the rules around, not touching and one, let's say for people who are in their dating phase of life but not yet married, is it just to prevent them just going all the way, having sex. And sounds to me like you're saying no, it's not just about that. It's about preserving intimacy for marriage.
Because in most cases, people say, of course, we're not going to have sex. I just want to hug a little bit.
Right, right.
What are you doing? What are you saying? That you can break intimacy into little portions and little bite-sized pieces? And no, you can't. Intimacy is sacred. So it's either the real thing, or it's sacrilege. Don't toy with intimacy.
And is intimacy only acceptable in marriage?
And in marriage, only certain times.
Right. What would you say to people who, there's a lot of people who, let's say, didn't grow up religious and they're not used to and they're not comfortable with this idea of very quick dating. So they can't just accept I'm going to be married in a month or get engaged in a month or 2 months or even 3 months. And so they'll say it's just not feasible, healthy for me to be completely non-touching in my as we develop our relationship, but I feel like I need a bit more time, than a couple months. I'm not talking years, but they just say. And so what would you say to people that feel that they just say it's I'm almost worried it could be unhealthy to they say they give that confidence. I know we're not going to descend into anything more than just touching or whatever. Is it the end of the world?
It's so uh, the inconsistency. The argument used to be that if you allow men and women to just allow nature to take its course, men and women will get to know each other better, understand each other better, be less naive, and then when they choose a husband, they will be much wiser and much more aware, and they will make better choices. Now, after having had many boyfriends and many girlfriends, with all the experience you could possibly want, you're still afraid to get married, as if you've never dated anyone before. Now, all of a sudden, oh no, that's not enough time because I have to get to know this guy. Well, how many guys do you have to get to know before you can make a mature decision? So, if we're not having sex, that's not good. We are having sex, that's not good. So, how do you get married? When can you finally be confident that you're marrying sanely, properly? Like you say, not years. Why not years? Don't you want to know whether this guy will be a good husband for years? So why don't you just try living with him for like 25 years, and then you'll know for sure that you're too old to get married. No, all these social experiments, they're not sensible, and they don't work, and nobody wants to admit it. It hasn't worked. How do you know sex is going to be good with this person? Well, in that case, don't have sex. How do you know it's going to be good? You want a bad experience? No, you'll have sex, but you won't marry him because the sex might not be good. And be a little more consistent. Why do you have sex with a stranger? Aren't you afraid it's not going to be good? But you find a guy who's really nice, who wants to marry you, who wants to live with you for the rest of his life. No, 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 no. I'm not sure the sex will be good. What is wrong with you? You'll jump into bed with any guy, but you won't marry him because the sex might not be good. So you have to have sex with him first. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are instances where people, understandably, just feel maybe they've had bad experiences where some surprises came up a few months in. They just want a bit of time just to settle in, you know?
Have you ever heard of anybody who says, I've had some bad experiences, no more sex?
No, I'm not. I'm not necessarily talking about sex. I just mean the notion of people saying I need a bit more time than, let's say, is typical in the quick dating of religious circles.
Time for what?
To feel settled in my relationship, to feel that this person is really likes me. I don't know. To avoid an engagement breakup or whatever.
Well, look, it is a very good question you're asking. What can possibly give people the confidence that they're making a good choice?
Mm.
More time? That's not an answer. What's more time going to do for you?
They might say just you experience more of life together. That can bring out certain stresses, certain seasons, characteristics. You get to know someone more. Certainly in the first few months, you do.
So, how long do you want to make that
Maybe
experiment?
someone might say, look, instead of 3 months, I need 9 months or a year or 6 months. I don't know. Someone that's looking to take it seriously, but they just,
So, you date for a year and nothing bad happened. Nothing terrible, anyway.
yeah,
So now you're going to marry him?
they say, yeah,
You still don't, you still don't know anything for sure.
right.
So, what have you gained? You've gotten used to not trusting each other. What does it mean to date for a year? It means for a year, I'm not sure I can trust you. Well, it becomes a habit. We are now in the habit of not trusting each other.
Mm, I hear that. But there's always going to be that to some extent at the start. You're saying you want to try and minimize it as much as possible, the dating stage.
So, number one, you have to know what marriage is. Because if you don't know what marriage is, how can you trust marriage? No matter how long you date the guy or the girl, you don't know what you're looking for. You're never going to find it, no matter how long you keep looking.
Mm,
So, knowing what marriage is would make a big difference. Knowing the sanctity of marriage, also great difference. People don't know the sanctity of marriage and they're afraid of it because you're afraid of the unknown. Usually, the decision to marry comes suddenly, it doesn't build. Something clicks and it's done.
mm,
And it's not time and it's not experience. Even if you date for a year and then decide to get married, that decision is a rash, sudden click. You don't know why or what made you decide.
yeah.
So if you're going to do that in the end anyway, you might as well do it now. And I don't know what the final ultimate answer is, but it would be nice if people would at least admit that the way we're doing it is not working. It's not working.
Yeah.
Why do you keep repeating the same thing, knowing it has only made matters worse for marriages? So try something else.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.